Okay, so to get the rear wheel off, basically all you got to do is you got to take the axle nut out. It's a nut and a bolt. One on this side, and the bolt's on this side. So you're gonna need 2 wrenches. Important thing to note is this comes off a lot easier if you don't jack the rear wheel first. This axle will come out a lot easier if you leave the rear wheel on the ground. So prior to jacking up the bike, take this off and pull the axle out. Once you get the axle out, you're gonna have your nut, you're gonna have your alignment, whatever that thing is, the thing that aligns your rear wheel, and you're gonna have a spacer, and you're gonna have the same on the other side. You're gonna have your axle, you're gonna have your alignment, and you're gonna have a spacer. I believe there's a washer in there too. So you want to keep everything together. You want to keep your axle, your spacer, your washer, and all that in one pile. Same thing with this side, you want to keep that in another pile. So do all that with the rear wheel on the ground. And then after you're done doing that, actually let me do that first and then I'll show you. Okay, so the axle's removed. So on your right side, what you had was, you have your spacer, you have your washer, you have your nut. What was this? This nut was a 1 7/8, I believe, or 7/8 socket for this nut, and then I just put a adjustable wrench on the other side. Down this side, you have your adjuster, you have your axle, and this other spacer right here is going to come off once I remove the wheel, but I'm going to jack it up first. But like I said, before jacking it up, remove the axle, it comes out a lot easier. Okay, so I got my rear wheel jacked up on the stand here. So this is your brake adjustment lever right here. So basically you're just going to loosen this nut up all the way until it comes off the spring. Check how much free play is in your rear brake pedal at this point, because you're gonna want just kind of keep a mental note of that. The service manual says 0.8 to 1.2 inches of free play, but I'm just gonna go by feel. So feel that, because this nut right here is what adjusts the amount of free play that has. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this nut off, and then the rear wheel should come right off. Okay, so here's the rear wheel off. Be careful to keep your brake on the other side in one piece. It goes back together once you put it back. Once you get the the whatever it's called, the tensioner back on, everything will align back up the way it should. But we're going to double check just to make sure that the brake works as it's supposed to before going out riding, obviously. But anyway, so this is a what is this, a 6mm Allen, and with a wrench on the other side, and there's a little washer on the other side. So just go ahead and remove these bolts. Okay, 6 bolts, sprocket comes right off. Like I said, it's a 6mm Allen and a 12mm wrench for the bolts. Now, one thing to note about this is, notice here that there are countersunk holes here. So I had to order countersunk bolts. See how there's countersunk bolts right there? So that's one thing to note. The regular bolts won't go in, or the bolts that came off won't go in. So when you order the sprocket, you also have to order the bolts. I put links to both of these things in the description. So let me put that on and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so it's back on there. Notice the see how these bolts, they fit nicely in there. That's because they are countersunk bolts, or I think reverse countersunk. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. But anyway, the sprocket comes with countersunk holes, so you need the bolts to go with it. You can't just use your stock bolts because they are flat. They do not have that little groove or the pitch to fit nicely into the new sprocket. So you do need the new bolts. What was it? It was a to get them on, it was an 8mm Allen and a 13mm wrench. To get it off, it was a 6mm Allen and a 12mm wrench. To get it on, you needed slightly bigger wrenches. So that's on. All the bolts are tight. And make sure when you're tightening them, you use cross patterns, and then you tighten them all down such that the thing gets tightened properly. It's the same as tightening lug nuts on the car. But that's that. So now I just put everything back together and adjust the chain tension and the rear brake play, and we'll see how it looks. I got the rear tire back on. Rear tire is back on. Now I just have to align the rear tire, and I have to adjust the chain tension to the proper tension. So in order to align the rear wheel to make sure it's spinning straight, you're going to have to use these adjusters, which are these right there. Now there's a pin and there's grooves. There's also numbers on here, but I don't go by the numbers because the numbers are not exactly the same on both sides. What I go by is grooves. So you can either start from this end and feel with your finger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Count as many grooves as you want until it reaches the pin, and then do the same on the other side. But you can't just go by the numbers, because if you look here, you'll see like that's a 7, but there's a groove there, there's a groove there, there's a groove there, so there's grooves all around the 7, but you want to have it be, I just go by feel. I put my finger and I just feel these grooves and I count the amount. As long as they're the same on both sides where this pin goes in, that's how I ensure that I'm at the correct alignment. So as long as both sides are the same, after I tighten everything up and measure the chain slack, I give it one final look. I spin the rear tire just to make sure that it spins straight. But you know, a very, very good starting point is counting these grooves, making sure they're the same on both sides. One thing to note here, when putting this back on, you'll know that everything went back together correctly, because the drum brake here slides onto, I don't know if you can see that, there's a groove on the brake. I guess it's called the drum caliper. I'm used to disc brakes, I'm not used to drum brakes, but there's a groove in here and it slides on to the swing arm here. It'll only go on one way. That'll ensure you that the brakes are on straight. And then when you put this thing back on, the final step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten or loosen this nut as necessary in order to make sure that the rear brake pedal has the correct amount of play. But as far as checking the chain tension, I mean, a lot of people that do this all the time, they just go by feel. Or there's also the 3-finger rule. You know, if you can fit 3 fingers in there and then there's still tension, then that's the correct amount of chain tension. I like to use the caliper method. So basically, if you look in the owner's manual, it says that the correct amount of chain slack is 1.77 inches to 2.36 inches. Also, it's 45 millimeters to 60 millimeters, and that is moving it all the way down at the loose point and all the way up. So you measure that, and it needs to fall into that range. So what I do is I take my calipers here, I set it to 2 inches. I don't know if you can see that, but the zeroed point is right on 2 inches. So that right right there is a 2-inch gap, and that 2 inches falls right into that 1.77 to 2.36 range. And I just kind of hold it up to the chain, and I move the chain up and down, and see if it hits. So let me try and put the camera down here and see if I can get a good angle here for you. Come on, camera, work. No, don't go that way. Alright, so I just kind of holding the caliper still, going from pin to pin. Is that the, I don't know if you can see that. Just kind of hold the caliper still, all the way down, all the way up. It's right about 2 inches. So I don't know if that was the best camera angle, but basically you're just using these, you're holding the caliper still and you're moving the chain down as far as it'll go, to up as far as it'll go, and use the center of one pin as your reference point to take that measurement. So that's how you measure your chain tension, and then you make sure that these are aligned properly on both sides. Once these are aligned properly on both sides, you go ahead and you tighten it up, and then you do your final check. You spin the rear wheel to make sure that it's spinning straight. So let me go ahead and tighten everything up. Alright, so everything's all done. Everything's put back together. Everything is to spec. Chain tension right where I wanted it. Like I said, I measured from, I took one pin and went from down here and measured 2 inches using the calipers. The alignment I found was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the pin is in the 9th. So starting from the tab, I counted 9 grooves down on this side, and I counted 9 grooves down on this side as well. So starting from the tab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the groove is in the 9. I tighten this axle down. You can do a final check, make sure that the rear tire spins freely, or spins straight. Just kind of eye it up, and it looks like it's spinning pretty straight there. My brake pad, I actually measured it with the calipers instead of just going by feel, but I measured it right from the top point to the point that it goes down. I got 1 inch. And that falls right in between the 0.8 to 1.2 inches. And let's see if the brake works. Spin that tire. Yes, it does. As it should. Everything's back together. Brake's functional. Rear tire straight. Chain tension the way the tension it's supposed to be. And now I have my nice light aluminum 46 tooth sprocket on there. So there's snow all over the ground, so I'm not going to get to take a rider's point of view like I did with the 1449 for at least another week or so. But I want to take it out on the street tomorrow and see how it feels, which I can't wait to do. So that's that. Any questions, just go ahead and comment, and I'll reply back. Thanks for watching.